right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Um, we're gonna start. We have one halacha left in the the eighth chapter, right? We were yesterday describing the Rambam's, right? We said the Rambam had this thesis that the only true Navi that didn't need uh, to perform miracles to prove himself was Moshe, right? That was the thesis presented by the Rambam. And and he said that the only thing that Moshe really had to do, well, he kind of proved himself by Matan Torah, by Ma'amad Har Sinai. That's what sealed the deal. Okay, that's what we spoke about yesterday, and today he says we're 8:3 Perek Chet Halacha Gimel. So now that the Rambam goes on to say that, he concludes the chapter by saying, Lefichach, now that we've said everything regarding Moshe and his he's the ultimate Navi. Lefichach im Amar Hanavi va'asa osas umoftim gedol mebikash lahachish nevoso shel Moshe Rabbeinu ein shomen lo, because Moshe is, so to speak, on top of the food chain, right? Or I should say, on top of the totem pole, right? If anybody in the future were to contradict anything that Moshe said, Ein Shomen Lo, it is an absolute fact that it can't be true. Because if he's the ultimate, then there's no one ahead of him. Okay, so by definition, anything contrary to what Moshe stated, by definition, just can't be true. And therefore, we know that that's proof positive that this Navi is just a liar and he's making up a story. And therefore, we do not listen to him. Okay, Ein Shomen Lo va'anu Yodun b'beir she'osan ha'oses balat v'kishuvim. And the fact that this Navi 500 years later does some kind of magic and says this is proof that that I'm a Navi and I hereby state something against what Moshe said, we know for sure with 100% certainty we do not listen to him, even if he performs a trick. Lefisha nevuas Moshe Rabbeinu ena al pia osos. And the Rambam, he doubles down and triples down and repeats himself over and over and over. This is very un-Rambam-esque, right? To repeat over and over and over, but he's making a point. He's very, very emphatic that Moshe's greatness has nothing to do with his ability to perform tricks and magic. Eno al pi ha'osos kadesha na'aroch osos zela osos zeh. That's not what it's all about, is performing magic. Ela be'einenu ra'inihu. We saw it with our own eyes at Har Sinai. Uba'aznenu shamanua. And we heard it with our own ears. Kamoshe Shamahu, just like Moshe heard it at Har Sinai. We were all, whether we were there literally, whether we were there physically or literally or not literally or spiritually, however, us being together with everyone else at Har Sinai was proof positive. Okay, and that's all you need to know. And the Rambam, again, for the third time, again, I'm stressing it, the Rambam doesn't mince words. He doesn't use words he doesn't need to say. He doesn't need to use. But for the third time, he's going to compare, right? He's going to compare this to Adam, that you have to take it for gospel, right? That what Moshe says is correct, okay? Halama davar doma le'edim sheheidu la'adam al davar shera be'enav she'eno kumo shera'a she'eno shomea lahen, right? If a person witnesses something and he knows for sure that he sees it, and then two people say, hey, you saw this. And he says, no, I know what I saw. You can't contradict me, right? So the Rambam again compares this to testimony. So if you have a case like that, where a person knows exactly what he saw, and two people the next day say, hey, we are going to court and we know that you didn't see this, right? So that's what the the Rambam compares this, is contradicting Moshe is like someone who contradicts someone who knows exactly what he saw. Right? I know for sure that you two guys, Reuben and Shimon, are false witnesses because I know exactly what I saw. Lo tishma el divrei hanavi hahu. Therefore, we have an obligation not to listen, okay, to this Navi if he's contradicting Moshe. Shaharei zeba elecha ba'osu mofes lahachish ma shara'ita be'einecha. Okay, that if just because someone produces something magical to our eyes, okay, and it contradicts what we see with our own eyes. Again, we saw Ma'amad Har Sinai. We know what we saw. And two people come and say, no, you didn't see this. We know exactly what we saw. Just because you could prove to me by some kind of trick, right, that you have special powers doesn't mean that I have to listen to you. And that's how the Rambam ends off this chapter, once again, stating how critical this concept that Moshe is, so to speak, the be-all and end-all when it comes to the Navi that is unassailable, that cannot be put down forever. So the 9th chapter, the Rambam starts off discussing more of Nevius, prophecy, and how the Torah cannot be changed. Okay, that's kind of the theme over here. And he starts off by saying, Davar barur umefurash b'Torah shehi mitzvah omedes la'olam ule'ome olamim ein la lo shinoi v'lo giraun v'lo tosefes. The Rambam is going to make a very, very critical and fundamental principle that is really the tenet of our religion. That was a long sentence, but bottom line is this is an important line, he says. That what? He's saying that there is something that is clear and specific in our Torah, that our commandments are forever. They are perpetual, forever and ever. We can't change it. We can't decrease it, and we can't add to it. Shenamar as kol adav asher anochi mitzaveh eschem oso tishmurun la'asos lo tosef alav v'lo tigra mimenu. Okay, we have a commandment, and for those studying Daf Yomi a couple of weeks ago, the Gemara in Zvachim brought this down when it came to a very, very esoteric subject about sprinkling blood. And if you remember the topic where we weren't sure if the blood got mixed up, and we have 4 sprinklings and we have 1 sprinklings, and if you do 4, you're doing too many. If you're doing 1, you're not doing enough. So those learning Daf Yomi know this concept of Bal Tigra and Bal Tosif, right, from a couple of weeks ago. But the Rambam over here is introducing the subject of Navi Sheker by saying that our Torah cannot change. It's impossible. Now, I just want, and v'nemer of haniglos lanu uvanenu ad olam lasos is called devei Torah hazos. The revealed things are for us to do forever and ever. Okay, halamarta shekol divrei Torah mitzuvin anu lasosan ad olam. It doesn't stop. As long as this world exists, we have the same exact mitzvos from generation to generation, and we can't change the Torah, right? This, if you know Jewish history, this is what the Maskilim wanted to do. They wanted to change based on the generation, and this is a very, very, controversial, or as I like to say, a very, very hairy subject, because we always want to adapt, and that gets into trouble. Because when we start to change and say, well, let's just put the bima in the middle of the shul, and let's just add a choir, and let's just do this and this, before you know it, it leads to mixed dancing, as the joke goes. But on a serious note, I wanted to just say something. This is a book that's very near and dear to me. It's It's the book of that David Schwartz of blessed memory put together. And I quoted once his introduction, because in his introduction, he quotes from the Chiddushei Harim. I forgot why I brought this up a couple of years ago in a Tuesday night class, but on this topic that the Rambam says about how the Torah is perpetual and cannot change. You can't add to it, you can't decrease it, right? You can't change it. He says, he quotes from Harav Yitzchak Meir Alter HaChidushei Harim. So says David Schwartz, Nahag lomar shebechol dor vador mitpatechet havana mechudeshet shemetu'ememet v'shayechet b'miyuchad lo'otan hazman. He basically says that in every generation, very, very important, something will always come up that we didn't know the generation before. Like, for example, in the last 500 years, you had printing press, then you had in the Industrial Revolution, you had the engine, and then you had electricity. And today we have internet, and who knows what's going to be in 100 years from now, right? Thanks to AI. Something always comes up. So the job of the rabbis of the generation is not to change the Torah per se, because those tenets will never, ever change. We have to take the tools that we know and adapt it to, okay, how do we deal with electricity? Is it fire? Is it not fire? So for 2,500 years, no one had that problem because, no one knew it existed until the 1800s. Now we're like, okay, what do we do on Shabbos? So that's not a contradiction to the Torah. It's just, we didn't have this. Today, internet, putting an order into Amazon and it fulfills on Shabbos. Are you buying something on Shabbos? Well, for 2,700 years, we didn't have that problem. Not because we didn't know about it, but because it just didn't exist. So that's exactly what the point is, that the sign of a good leader is to take the topic, the subject, and to adapt it to, okay, what would the Torah say about it? Right? The Torah doesn't talk about 99% of the things that we're dealing with today. The Torah is talking about karbanos and all kinds of other things that we don't have anymore. Right? How do we deal with things today? That's why we have to be very, very careful not to change the Torah. And that's why the Rambam uses specific words. He says, lo shinoi, lo geraon, velo tosefet. There's no adding, there's no subtracting, and there's no changing, period, end of report. He's very, very emphatic. Okay? Now, why is he saying this? He's saying this because of his next sentence in the middle of Halacha Aleph. He says, Halamadata she'ei navi rashay lechadesh davar ma'ata. So a Navi can't come up, perform a trick, and say, I'm a Navi, I was sent by God. I'm going to instruct that from now on, we're going to change Shabbos to Sunday. Okay? That way you could watch your college football, right? But you can't watch the NFL. All right? We have a new rule. All the laws of Saturday are now on Sunday. And he performs his, he has an os, he has a simon, he does some kind of magic trick, and he says, God sent me. And we don't know whether to believe him or not. So the criteria is, well, does this go against the Torah? Well, it kind of goes against the Torah because we know that the seventh day God rested, not the first day. So therefore, this concept of Shabbos has to be on the seventh day. It has to be on a Saturday. So if the Navi says, I have something new to teach you, we don't listen to him. And says the Rambam, Lefichach, im ya'amor ish, bein min ha'umos, bein mi Yisrael, if someone gets up, either non-Jewish, why does he say non-Jewish? Obviously, okay, bein mi Yisrael, v'yasa osu mofes, he comes and he performs a trick, he makes the Statue of Liberty disappear, right? And we're like, wow, this guy, right? This guy has special powers. Whatever he says we have to do. V'yomer shahashem shlacho, and he says, God sent me here to tell you, lahosif mitzvah, or legroa mitzvah, to tell you, o lefarish b'mitzvah min ha-mitzvahs, perush shalosh shemana mi-Moshe, or he has a nuance, for example, in Basar V'chalav. He says, from now on, right, you don't have to wait 6 hours. You have to wait 6 minutes, right? As long as you don't eat it together. We're like, oh, great. We love this, right? It sounds like a good thing. So sorry, right? We're not going to listen to him. Osha Amar Shosa Mitzvah Shenasav Ben Yisrael Einam Laolam Uladore Doros El Mitzvos Lafiz Manhayu. Or if he comes up with a what we call in yeshiva a bomb chiddush and says there are certain mitzvos that aren't forever; they're only temporary. Now, if you remember, we had a class about a year ago in Sanhedrin. I think it was Chaf Aleph or Chaf Beis, where I brought down a very, very controversial Rabbeinu Bachai that said, what, Shmuel, remember? That what is mitzvah number 500? Going back to Mitzrayim. Remember that? All right. And we had, and we quoted Rabbeinu Bachai that said that mitzvah is only temporary. It doesn't apply forever. So that sounds like this goes against the Rambam, because the Rambam says it's impossible for any of the 613 mitzvahs to be called temporary, right? And you remember what the proof was? The proof was it had to be temporary because there's no way that the Rambam would have violated the commandment of living in Egypt, right? It was an absolute stunner, right? He proved his thesis from a negative, right? He proved that it had to be temporary because there was no way on earth the Rambam would violate this commandment, right? That was the proof of the Rabbeinu Bachai. Okay, just bringing that up. It just occurred to me. But anyways, it's funny. It's ironic how the Rambam himself says it can't be temporary, and the Rabbeinu Bachai uses it as a proof, right, for the Rambam. Okay. Anyway, so getting back to the point is that there is nothing that is temporary. Everything is forever. There's no such thing as l'sha'a, right? It's forever. Anyone who comes into our life and starts saying that these mitzvos are temporary or it doesn't apply anymore because it's too antiquated, it doesn't jive with society today, like we hear all the time, right? Why do you do all these things, right? You can't carry on Shabbos, it doesn't make sense, right? Everything we do doesn't make sense, it doesn't apply anymore. And Navi who says that is labeled a Navi Sheker. And we remember from Sanhedrin, there's a whole parak called Eluhen Hanechnakin, right? It's the 9th or so parak in Sanhedrin that lists the people who are chayav chenek, strangulation. And I believe number 5 on the list is the Navi Sheker. Umisaso bechenek al shehezid l'daber b'shem Hashem asher lo tzivahu. Right? Someone who claims to have gotten the word from God, and in fact, he is full of baloney. Shehu baruch hu tziva l'Moshe sha'mitzvah hazos lanu v'neinu ad olam, because the truth is that these mitzvahs are for us forever and ever, as long as this world is in existence. And the Rambam interestingly quotes the lo ish el v'yechazev. He quotes a pasuk from a non-Jew, from Bilam. All right, by Midbar Chav Gimel is the end of Parshas Balak, where Bilam, in one of his, many incantations, says Lo ish el. He says God is not man, v'yechazev, because he could speak falsely. God can't speak falsely. People, unfortunately, all the time do speak falsely. That's the difference. So this person, this Navi, is labeled a Navi Sheker, and we throw the book at him. We give him chenek. All right. We'll do another one. So if that's true, then what about when the Torah in Parashas Re'eh talks about a Navi, and he says, I'll appoint a Navi from you. All right. So when do we listen to the Navi and when do we not listen to the Navi? This is, we've spoken about many times. It's very, very unclear. How do we know if he's telling the truth or not? So the Rambam says, Lo laso datuba. This Navi is not here to create a dot, right? The word dot, like today, the word in Hebrew, dati, right? It means religious. So the word dot actually means religion. A Navi can't create a new religion or create something that didn't exist before. Lola so datuba el litzabot of divrei Torah. So what is a Navi's role at the end of the day? Well, a Navi is there to give Musar, right? Like we do at 2 o'clock on Yeshivas Elimelech, right? We have 5 minutes of Musar. That's exactly what the job of a Navi is to do, is to command the words of the Torah, ulahazer am shelo and to remind people not to be violating the Torah. Kamosha amar ha'achron shavahen, just like the last, right? The very, very last Navi is, anyone remember? The last of the Treyasar is someone by the name of Malachi, or Malachi in English. And all the way at the end in chapter 3, we read Zichru Torahs Moshe Avdi, right? This is the Haftorah for Shabbos HaGadol, if anyone remembers, right? It's called Zichru Torahs Moshe Avdi. That's what Malachi says. He reminds everyone to keep the Torahs Moshe, right? V'chen im tivanu b'divrei harishus. Now, the Navi could also say, if he commanded to do something, what we call divrei, something optional, the Navi could also say, okay, guys, tonight, I think you should all go to the Yankee game, right? It's a good idea. Or asu milchama hayom o al tasu. Or I advise you to go to war against this country, or don't go to war. Binuchu mazo v'al tavnuhu. Build this wall, build this highway, do this, do that, do something that's not Torah related. So the Navi has the right to do that. Mitzvah lishmo alo. If he's a Navi emes and he's advising you to do something, to go to that game tonight, then it's a mitzvah to listen to that Navi. Overall dvarav chayev misa b'dei shemayim. And if he's proven to be a Navi emes, because he's not there to promote a new religion, right, like Jim Jones, right? He's straight and honest. So then it's a mitzvah to listen to this Navi because he is a full-fledged kosher prophet, right? And we have an obligation, as the Rambam mentioned in the last chapter, we have an obligation to listen to him. Shenemer v'haya ha'ish asher lo yishma el divrei el devarai asher yedaber b'shmi anochi edrash mi'imo. Right? In Parshas Re'eh, where it talks about a Navi, it says there's a Navi Sheker, but a Navi Emes, we have a responsibility to listen to. And if you don't listen to this Navi, what's your punishment? Anochi edrosh mi'imo. I will seek from him, right? I will take revenge on this person. And the way we interpreted that is that this person is chayev misa, but he's only chayev misa b'dei shamayim. Okay, not b'dei adam. Okay, so one more? No. Okay, we'll stop here because now we're going to talk about the Navi